States is mine.
We shall overcome. Yes, we can.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Well, welcome. Chip Franklin with you. It is January the 6th, the 2-year anniversary of the insurrection. Although, if you were to talk to some Republicans today, they'd say, insurrection? Oh, those were just, as Eric Trump just said 2 days ago, he goes, most of those people were tourists going in there for selfies. Nice enough to join me here is Brian Karem, White House correspondent, author of Free the Press in its 4th edition. Check it out. I know you got a huge, incredibly busy day today. Are we going to get, how many votes are we going to get in today? Are we going to get, have you heard of a deal, any backroom deals on McCarthy?
If anybody knows what's going to go on, I think if they tell you they do, they're lying.
Yeah.
I think it's still all up in the air, and the longer it goes on, the more wide open it becomes. Chip, there's no doubt that what we're looking at right now is just the destruction of the Republican Party, and and you're seeing it live in living color on NBC and everywhere else. It's what it began 2 years ago to this day with the insurrection and the 20 holdouts in the GOP that the rest of the GOP are beholden to, or those who are intent on finishing the job that was started 2 years ago.
When it happened, it's funny. When I was watching it, we're sitting right where I am right now, and I have a television right above my screen here. And I was watching it, and it never occurred to me that they were going in there trying to hurt people. I mean, you were there. You were in the middle.
It occurred to me. I watched it happen in real time.
Well, for the fact that you were working for Playboy at the time probably saved your ass, right?
That's the story. I watched those people crawling up the wall. I said, "Hey, you morons! There's steps on either side, and someone's gonna fall and break their neck." Someone did. So they came running after me as if it were my fault and threatened to kick my butt. I'd seen him hit a couple other reporters and assault an AP photographer. So when they came at me, I knew that, they meant business. So I just flashed my Playboy press pass and said, "Hey, wait a minute, Playboy." And the lead idiot came up and said, "Really, Playboy?" And he looked at it and sniffed it and he goes, "Can you get me into the mansion?" I said, "Yeah, sure, not a problem." Yeah. And he circled his guys up. "Okay, guys," and they left.
Well, I mean, for those of us that grew up there and used to go to see on the 4th of July, we'd go down and listen to, the incredible music, everything from, remember when James Watt won the band, the Beach Boys, because they were un-American? Remember that? Yeah. The former Secretary of the Interior under Reagan. And then, of course,
today he'd be a liberal.
Well, I mean, just, going down there. And to me, that was one of the first signs as a kid when I realized just how disconnected. I mean, I remember in 1980, the young Republicans were these little pricks that used to come down and with a poorhouse pub where I used to play on Wisconsin Avenue. And these they would come in and they would just start talking about conservatism and how, we were letting black people just run the world. I mean, just, racist stuff right off the top. But the other part of it that's fascinating to me is that, when I think back about, just how much that city was before the bombing in Oklahoma City, and just how, what an experience it was to be there and to see how it's changed now. It's a fortress. Those steps, you can't walk up the steps of the Capitol like you used to. You can't, I guess you can today, but I mean, when we had right after January 6th and whenever there's a big event, they lock everything down. And it's, I don't know. I have Congressman Ritchie Torres coming on with us in the second half hour. I think Eric Swalwell's story of being on the House floor, calling his wife, she's giving the kids a bath in there, and he really didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, that thing went from bad to horrific in seconds.
Nobody knew what was going to happen. And I knew this much. I watched Rudy Giuliani, the interchangeable Trump sons, Tweedledee and Tweedle Stupid, and the president stand out there and incite a riot. And I mean, they encouraged it, they orchestrated it, they emboldened them to do it. And in fact, when I walked with some of those people up towards the Capitol, they said they were doing it because my president had told me to do this. That's why they went. So they went up there with righteous patriotic indignation, neither understanding the real situation nor caring. It was a chance for them to thump their breast and proclaim themselves patriots without really knowing what it is to be one. And it was frightening. It was disheartening. And like you, I have watched Washington, D.C. turn from an open city to a closed fortress over the last 40 years. And it's been quite frightening.
I mean, and not to sound like all boomerish and everything, but having grown up there and having heard stories, like when I was working at WMAL, there was these two talk show hosts who'd been there probably, I want to say, since the late 40s. When I met them, they were in their early 80s, and they've both since passed. But the fantastic thing is one of them said one day, and this was obviously in the 50s, and they were doing the show. Hey, Harry Truman just called. Do you want to have lunch? They went down. They walked into the White House. No one stopped them. They got up to the gate right in front, and they made a call in. They go walk in, and there's Harry Truman walking around the White. I mean, people think of the West Wing and stuff. To me, it's a real bizarre world we live in now. That they're unapproachable. If you approach them, I mean, there's security now around and everything. And I don't know.
There's several rings of security. Some days you can't even walk on, Lafayette Park. Some days you can't walk past the White House. When I first started going there, Pennsylvania Avenue was open, and we could drive as reporters. We could drive right up to the White House, drop our stuff off, turn around and park next door. You can't do that today.
I think I don't know. I mean, I think that we've done a good job going after, the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys. And I I taped this interview with Congressman Torres, and he'll be with us in a little bit. But one of the questions that I did ask him is, are you satisfied with Justice's handling of the higher ups, the people that organized this thing? And he didn't really answer me. How would you answer that question?
I would say they haven't. Quite honestly, they've gathered up all the low-lying, flotsam and jetsam, the foot soldiers, but they haven't really gone after those who. Well, I'll put it to you this way: I would like to see the indictment sooner rather than later. It's been 2 years. It'd be nice at the end of today that there was some kind of indictment, even symbolic. I don't care who it is, Eastman, whatever, but an indictment to recognize the severity of what has occurred. I understand it's easier to commit a crime than it is to prosecute someone for a crime. And I understand that when going after the higher ups, especially Trump, you better not miss. You better dot your I's.
What's that old Shakespearean saying for that? If you're going to go for the king?
Yeah, better not miss.
Better not miss. Yeah.
So I understand all that. That being said, it's been 2 years. While there have been many of the foot soldiers who have been prosecuted, none of the organizers, and I would like to see that change sooner rather than later.
But I mean,
I would love to see Mark Meadows and
Meadows, and I mean, but I look at other
or Boebert.
I mean, the question comes down to, and when you start to break this down, it seems to me the real, as bad as January 6th was and will always be. You can probably make a case that Trump, speaking in his mob-like way, never told anybody to go to the Capitol and do violence. In fact, at one point he said peaceful. And I just, I wonder if there's enough there to get him. Isn't there a case in D.C. of an insurrection case where the Ku Klux Klan had a rally and they told people, and they were eventually indicted, but they won in court. It's a tough thing. It seems to me that,
to quote Jamie Raskin, we went where the law took us. We took no assumptions, and it takes us to these 4 recommendations. And I think there's a couple of things that
they're
Donald
not
Trump,
prosecutors, right? I mean, that
they referred it to the DOJ for prosecution. Right. And Jamie is a constitutional scholar and attorney, so I trust him in his decision making. But more importantly, There was one thing that Donald Trump did that day that to me showed he really was behind all of it. And I was at the White House, and I had walked up to Capitol Hill and come back. And it wasn't just me, but dozens, and I mean dozens of reporters went back begging the president to come walk 60 feet from his office to the White House briefing room and speak against this insurrection. Just say something. And it wasn't just us, his own staff. Judd Deere, who was in the office that day and whom I talked to repeatedly, said, we've tried. He won't do it. That's, to me, that it shows exactly who was behind it and what he had to look. Only one person stood to gain from this. While he may have couched his language as such so he could pretend he was a mob boss, even the mob bosses go down for that. So he needs to go.
Well, yeah, I mean,
and that's not politics. That's just facts.
I share your sympathy, though. But I mean, we both know enough of the law, being outside of it, to know what you said. But what you said has
outside of it.
but there's a lot there to prove. I mean, I really believe at this point that, I can't believe I'm saying this, that prosecuting Trump right now is might be a mistake. That if we allow him to go down at his own hand, and he seems to be quite capable of doing that, and bring the Republican Party down, I think if we prosecute him, two things can happen. One, the first is we galvanize his support, right? And the second is we galvanize his support, and then we don't get a conviction. And then he and Trumpism are stronger than ever. His whole family, his kids, and all that. And I could be wrong, but that's what I fear. That's what I really fear.
Well, I think what they'll do is work around to him. They started at the lower levels, getting the flotsam and jetsam, and next they'll move to the next tier up. So Eastman, Giuliani would be nice to see, just to see if he'll have another press conference out in front of the Four Seasons. But
well, yeah.
For the comic relief. I mean, there are plenty of people to get besides Trump that you would accomplish the task of holding people accountable without getting Trump. But I ultimately believe that if the actuary table doesn't get Donald Trump, that justice will. And at the end of the day, I just don't think you're going to see Donald Trump on the ballot in 2024. In November of 2024, I'll say it right here, he won't be on the ballot for the Republicans.
All right.
If the Republican Party even exists.
Well, hang with us a little bit longer. I know you got an insane day.
Yeah.
All right? You yell when you got to go. I know that our next guest, former prosecutor and former Republican today, an attorney who is, I guess I want to say, a vicious seeker of the truth on Twitter. And you do it real well. Ron Filipkowski, nice enough to be with us as well today. We were just, when I look at, and I'm going to play a little bit later in the second half, some of the chronology of January 6th. And Brian and I were talking about this, and we'll get to McCarthy in a second, but I think the real question here is that did the events that led to January 6th, are they still alive? Are the roots of that day still alive? Is there another January 6th possible? Or would the federal government turn into what I think maybe a lot of us thought it should have been that day, but even on more aggressive? I mean, what I guess I'm trying to say is, if another January 6th would be bad, not just for those that did it, but for everyone. And I sense it could happen again. Maybe not here, but maybe in Michigan.
You're watching Congress, right? The end of it's happening in Congress right now, Chip. I mean, those 20 holdouts in Congress. I'm sorry, Ron, I didn't mean to jump. But what I'm watching in Congress in the last 3 days is a continuation of the January 6th 2 years ago. The same people, and they're trying this way. They failed with a violent coup. Now they're trying to stage a subtle coup. And they're holding the rest of the country hostage while they change the rules so the minority can rule over the majority, which is what they tried to do on January 6th on the insurrection. So it's ongoing.
Ron, what's your sense here 2 years later?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's ever stopped. I mean, it stopped probably in February and March of 2021 when they all kind of went underground and were hiding, hoping that they weren't going to get arrested. And then they kind of resurfaced and went right back to their antics. So, yeah, and what you just said there, Chip, about Michigan, this is what I've said for a long time. It's not going to happen in D.C. In fact, when they tried to hold another DC rally, Matt Brainerd tried to do it about a year ago. It flopped. They're all afraid to go to DC, but it's going to happen in Phoenix. It's going to happen in Michigan. It's going to happen in Pennsylvania. It's mini insurrections, and it's using the courts. It's using pressure on state legislatures, local government officials, school boards. There's 1,000 mini insurrections going on.
I guess, though, the question, though, is that are the Democrats prepared to do that? Because it's, as we all know, the legislatures, a great example of the power of the legislatures on a federal level would be, let's say Trump did run and no one got the electoral votes needed to 270 votes and it went to the House. 26 of the 50 legislatures are run by Republicans. And
Right.
that means that, in essence, as insane as it sounds, that's another backdoor for
that was Steve
45.
Bannon's plan. I mean, there was three different plans. You had the Eastman plan, and you had the Ivan Reichen plan that called the Pence memo. The alternate elector. You had martial law stuff. Steve Bannon's plan was what you just said, was to try and throw it back and have it go to the House, vote by state legislatures, and that's it. So Bannon wasn't talking about rerunning a new election like some of these other people were. He was talking about what you just said, doing that in 2020.
Yeah. Brian, I know you got to go. I'll see you later on, buddy. Thank you so
Brian.
much.
How are you?
Mr. Ron, you guys I would love to stay and debate this, but unfortunately I have to go down to the White House and listen to the president tell us what's going
That's
on
more
years later.
important.
So
Again, his book is Free the Press, fourth printing. Great read. See you later, Brian. Thanks.
Later.
All right. Ron, as a former prosecutor, and I have Ritchie Torres coming up in a few minutes,
Mhm.
and I spoke to him in advance and taped it. By the way, that's why there was a screw up this morning. We're not MSNBC. I'm trying to tape an interview while I'm doing a show in the middle of it. It was a challenge, but I think we pulled it off. But I as a prosecutor, and you were a federal prosecutor too, right? Okay.
Yes.
So the machinations behind bringing a case to court are both, about the law and justice, but also there's a political aspect to that as well. The Merrick Garland did not want to bring a case right before the midterms. And as in hindsight now, it looks like it was a good, smart move, right? When you agree?
I agreed with it.
Yeah.
I was probably one of the few.
Well, I'm going to tell you that I worry a lot about prosecuting this former president and everything. I mean, if a state did it, that's one thing, right? But if the next president prosecutes the former president, and we're going to see, I don't know if the speaker, whoever the speaker is, decides to pack judiciary with crazies, then we're going to have an impeachment of, or at least it'll get to the floor and a vote on the floor. And I don't know if you're going to get those 5 or 6 Republicans and everybody to lockstep to indict a president who has absolutely done nothing wrong. To the contrary, done great things. But do you think in some ways that indicting and convicting this president can bring about an even worse scenario, a more frightening political and cultural scenario?
It could. I mean, I've said that for a long time, that I've always been worried about the reaction. I don't think that means it shouldn't happen, but I do think that there's going to be a huge reaction. That's obviously why Trump declared for president so early, because he wants to make it look like, the current president his administration is indicting his opponent. And that's why he declared earlier than anybody ever has. So, yeah, I think that there is a great concern what the reaction would be from the right to Trump getting arrested. I think it could be pretty bad. But at the same time, I think that there's many Republicans quietly that'll breathe a sigh of relief. They want him taken off the board. They know he's a liability. And for the Justice Department to do that for them, where they can use that as a political issue and get rid of Trump at the same time, is a win-win for them. They'll scream and cry about it, but they'll also be happy.
Well, if we could have a trial and it could be on television and the 70, I don't know how many of the 70 million are part of the big lie and believe that, or how many were checkbook Republicans voting for a Republican. I don't know that answer. I'm worried that the checkbook number is a plurality and not a majority, and I worry about that, or minority, I should say. And I think that, yeah, again, when you lay it all out, and for example, like, what Letitia James is trying to deal with, all right, so here's a form where he declared, the value of this property for the insurance company different than he did for the government for taxes, and you're going to get a huge yawn, right? I mean, if we could show a phone call where Kushner's calling MBS and saying, hey, Khashoggi's going to be over there, here you go, here's our gift to you. I mean, I'm not saying that happened, but I mean, there are things that happened. I mean, just the meeting at Trump Tower with the Russians and the fact that we still call that a hoax. I've read 4 different books, and all of them seem to paint a really strong picture that there is more than just a friendly alliance with these oligarchs. And you've heard the latest one about Manafort apparently making a deal with Putin. When they pulled the support for Ukraine off the 2016 platform, the Republican Party, and you had Manafort coming after being with, what was the guy's name? The head of Ukraine, Yanukovych. I always mess his name up. But anyway, the former president of Ukraine who fled to Putin. I mean, all of that. And Eric Trump saying we get all our money from it. So when you look at this and you try to make a case to the American people, I think it's harder than a lot of people suspect. Those of us that don't like Trump, when you bring it down as a prosecutor and you put the case together, I would have some hesitation.
Federal courts have never televised. There's no televised federal court. I think that this needs to be televised. If it happens, I just think that we need to make an exception for this particular case. It's up to the courts to decide whether they're going to allow cameras or not. But I mean, not a gaggle of reporters, but just one feed for the whole country, because the problem is it's a circumstantial evidence conspiracy case. So what it is it's like a puzzle piece. It's just like a puzzle box. You dump it on the ground. If you pick out any individual piece, it makes no sense to you, right? But right. It only begins to make sense when you're putting all those pieces together and it forms a picture. That's what this case is going to be like. So unless it's televised, I think it's going to be really, really difficult for the American people to kind of wrap their head around some of the details,
Yeah, I think that you're right. And I think the thing that worries me, I guess, other than the fact that he might be lionized, as somebody that's standing up to Biden and others. I mean, if this were a Republican president prosecuting him, we might have what we have in the House today, which is this kind of backfighting and infighting. But when people understand, and you can correct me if you disagree, but the reason these are all about committee seat assignments. These are all about being able to self-aggrandize on these committees before their constituents in these gerrymandered red states. And this is what this is about. It's not about the country. I mean, when all I hear from, the gang of 20 are COVID, masks. Again, when you talk about, the Trump and the lie and the, that voice hasn't been so loud, but what they're trying to go back and do is attack science. And there's some danger here as well with DeSantis and others saying they're going to investigate public health officials. Here in California, there was a great book by Michael Lewis, another book called The Premonition. And I didn't know this at the time, but in California, in many states, a public health official has total autonomy over everybody except the governor. So if they see a tuberculosis outbreak, and there's many different types, I didn't know this. You can have tuberculosis in your brain, but it's when it's in your lungs. It's obviously a danger because of the expectorants. But I mean, when you look at the problems this country faces with the possibility of a pandemic and what we dodged, we had 1 million Americans die. I mean, if this had been SARS or MERS, we had a 0.3% fatality rate, and most of those people had some underlying conditions. I believe it's SARS that had a 30% fatality rate. 30%.
Right.
So, I mean, and we're not ready for that. And are we going to have to deal with, again, the anti-mask brigade? I mean, this is what DeSantis is pushing for legislation in his state. Now, granted, it's one guy, one state, but nonetheless, it's kind of an extension of what you said about January 6th ongoing. He wants to prosecute businesses that force employees to wear masks. So, I mean, or just take away even the voluntary part in government buildings. So I mean, I worry about science, as more because obviously policy, directs how we deal with everything from the common cold to, again, a worldwide pandemic. And, again, you go down the lists, Ukraine, other things. I just don't see where this goes. I think that what we'll see today, and maybe I think that do you have a feeling there's going to be some sort of compromise coming out of today at McCarthy?
Not really. I mean, he said that, but he said that a few times already. I just don't see any movement among the hardliners. I think the only solution is for McCarthy to step aside, for somebody like a Scalise, and I think that that's the only way out. I can't imagine. I mean, there might not be 20. He might pick up some votes,
Right.
but might get knocked down to 10. But I watched every interview that these guys give, podcast, Fox News, Newsmax, whatever it is. I watch and I follow all of them on social media, all 20. And I don't see a lot of movement from at least 10 hardcore people. So I really don't see a path for McCarthy to be speaker. I think it's going to have to be either Scalise, or you're going to end up with the Democrats making a deal with a handful of Republicans, which would be a disaster for them, for the Republicans.
But I was trying to, I went through the numbers and the names, and I was trying to figure out who those Republicans would be, and what the whip would do to them afterwards, and would they ever get another committee assignment? I mean, there's a lot of threats being made through the Republican Party today to prevent that from happening. I agree with you. Scalise would be.
Well, here's a little nugget that came up yesterday. By the way, turns out one of their big bones of contention is with Dan Crenshaw, because apparently McCarthy has promised Crenshaw the Armed Services Subcommittee, and they all hate Crenshaw. So one of their demands is for Crenshaw to be removed as subcommittee chair that McCarthy has already promised him. So how does McCarthy do that and not, piss off Crenshaw and his friends? I mean,
well, and the move to vacate. I mean, if you have the move to vacate built in there, is that a done deal, by the way?
With one vote?
One vote?
It takes one vote. That's crazy. I mean, so he gets elected speaker, and a week later they're trying to remove him. And here we go again.
You have some great stuff on your Twitter feed, and I don't have the video right now. I'll work it out in the next half hour. But of Matt Gaetz saying he'll resign if the moderates, and I was like, oh man, don't tease us, right? But Gaetz is a really good example. He nominated Trump and others, and I sometimes you can't tell when you're right in the middle of it, if things are slowing down or speeding up. It's Einstein's relativity. It's just hard to discern. I remember 2016 clearly. I had no idea it would last this long. And then I talked to people, and some people say, dude, this is a generational issue. But I do take some solace. My son, my oldest is 34, the other's 32, and they would never answer a robocall in a million years, right? They all have. So I don't know if we really understand or maybe underestimate the growing wave of resentment for young people for what the Republican Party stands for. Now, granted, obviously, young people are like everybody else. They all have different opinions, but it seems to me that that there is a growing sense, in a progressive sense, in young people in this country, people of color, Hispanics, marginalized people, LGBT, that are saying, what, the Democratic Party has some really good ideas. Yeah, they can be wasteful. Yeah, they can totally miss the mark many times. I mean, I look at Anthony Weiner as the perfect example of just one person that probably caused maybe all of this to happen with his laptop and the Comey press conference. It wouldn't, right? I mean, you can make that case, so we do have a self-destruct button on us. And I say we, not as a Democrat, but as a progressive. And I think you can be a progressive, and you can point out to Republicans and say, what, progressive policies help the people that buy your shit. Right? I mean, if we give tax breaks to corporations, they put it overseas. They don't hire people. We give tax breaks to the middle class. They buy stuff. Right. I mean, you don't have to be an economics major I've said that before to Nobel laureates, and then they go, yeah, that's basically it. I remember in college, in the 70s when it was, it was a different world. It was, I think in some ways before Reagan, that sense, when Gerald Ford was considered a conservative, Where do you see us? I mean, in the next 2 years as we move forward here, Ron, do you get a feeling that there will be a slow, incremental understanding in the Republican Party of the mistake they made 6 years ago?
Yeah, I do. I think that these hearings over the speaker are helpful because I think that the more the American people, and I talk about the silent middle all the time, the middle of the country that doesn't really pay that much attention to politics, watches local news, sports. The more they see of people like Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Greene being the face of the party, instead of the face of the party being McCarthy or McConnell or Lindsey Graham or some of these milquetoast Republicans, instead the faces are becoming Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Greene. This is only the Ted Cruz. This is only helpful to Democrats. On your point on Gen Z, one of the big reasons why Democrats have done so well with the younger group demographic, especially right now, is because the RNC decided a few years ago to turn over that outreach to the youth vote to Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA. And that's their job for the Republican Party, is to get the youth vote. I mean, their messaging is drop out of college, get married young, go to church, have lots of kids. And that's just not a message that really resonates that much with young people today. And so I think that's the Republican Party is really shooting themselves in the foot with the youth vote by turning it over to Charlie Kirk, who is just out of touch. I mean, he can't relate to these people.
I knew a bunch of these guys, Chuck Todd, and Tucker Carlson back in the day. There was a thing called Hotwire back in the early 90s, and they would fax political stuff to people that wanted. And they started this little burgeoning business. And there was a guy named Howard Mortman, who's a director in C-SPAN now, all old friends. And I remember these kids, and they were kids, and they're like 10 years younger than me. And at the time, that seemed like a kid, right? And I remember, Connie Morella, who was a congresswoman in Montgomery County, a Republican, who used to say, all I have to do to get elected is pull out an appropriations bill and look at the crap. And William Proxmire's Golden Fleece Award every year, right? I think that you can have that conversation and say, look, Republicans, we're on the same page. We want to pull some of this pork out of here. And, and I don't know if we have to visit Citizens United again to do that, because so much of the pork, is influenced by lobbyists. I don't know what we have to do, but to me, that's the path. The path to me is always start with money. Start with the things that affect people. What did Carville's famous quote? It's the economy, stupid. I mean, that's where we need to go. When we concentrate, and I know these other issues are huge, whether it's climate change or LBGT, but this right now is what we have to do to win. And we have to do it in a way that people can understand. Connie Morella was a Republican that I voted for, the only Republican I've ever voted for, and I voted for 4 or 5 times. And to listen to her, she was a remarkable politician. That seems like an oxymoron, but she really, really was. Do you see anybody out there like that? I mean, in our party, in the Democratic Party, somebody can communicate like that?
You mean among younger Democrats?
Across the board, some way to convince Republican voters that weren't. I mean, one of the reasons, this, people don't vote for people, they vote against people. Yeah. I mean, they hate us with a passion. I mean, if you go on the street and like up in Orange County, if I were to take a microphone and interview people up there and ask them about Democrats, they'd lose their minds. And I guarantee you they couldn't put any substance to their hatred, right? They couldn't articulate exactly what it is they hate. I mean, you've been a Republican, and I started out more conservative, and I find myself now as a progressive, mostly to stop what the Republican Party is doing. Not necessarily an AOC type Bernie Sanders progressive, but a stopgap progressive. I mean, what do you see moving on from this? How do we fix this?
I don't think it's necessarily about people. I do think it's about issues. I think that, Democrats have done a great job with the legislation that they passed, but there still are a handful of nagging issues that I wish that they would take on, which I think could really cement a real supermajority for the Democratic Party.
Give me a couple.
The border. I mean, the border's got to be dealt with. I mean, I guess Biden's going down there now for the first time. That's great. Kamala Harris, who's the border czar, has never been there. Media doesn't cover it, but right-wing media covers it. And it's a serious problem.
Wait,
I
Ron,
mean,
let
there
me
is
ask
a
you
lot
something.
of crime. There is a lot of drugs. There is a lot of migrants coming across. It's kind of a mess. The Republicans are partially to blame for that. But the administration has not enunciated any clear, coherent border policy. I don't know what our border policy is of the Biden administration. I continue to wait for them to tell me. Crime is another issue. You know, I do think this is an issue in your area. I mean, cashless bail, the homeless, which leads to homeless situations, also as well, the criminal justice issues. There's so many, and I think because of the whole defund the police unfortunate slogan, you know,
Which, by the way, no
Democrats are
Democrat,
afraid of that issue.
yeah,
you
no
know.
Democrat ever actually said those words as a
No,
policy, right?
But
yeah.
they allowed, again, they always allow Republicans to frame the issue with a slogan. And instead of fighting back, they kind of run away, or they put out like a 14-point plan that nobody ever reads, you know?
Well, let me just interrupt you real quick about the border.
Yeah.
So if I were the president, I would say, you have a border issue, people coming across our border. And the first thing I would question is why? Well, they're coming across for economic reasons, right? I mean, there's no terrorists coming across the border. Intelligence will tell you that. That was all bullshit from day one, right? So why don't we have a summit with Mexico and Central America and work on solving this by helping their economy? If we can help them build their economy, two things happen. One, people stay down there. Two, we have a trading partner. I mean, Mexico's natural resources are they're out of sight. Why don't we work with them to develop their nation or their country into a nation that can again cooperate with all the other countries and one day be a member of the big eight, as it were, right? I mean, why can't we do that? Why, instead of talking about walls and more border police? The truth is that, you know, they can help us. We have to give them incentive.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I mean, walls and border police is never going to solve the issue. It's too big of a border, and we're talking about too many people. It can help a little bit, but it's not going to stop it. It's not going to stop fentanyl. Fentanyl comes into the country through ports, through planes, through Florida,
mostly
through California.
Through ports. Yeah, mostly through ports, right?
It comes in through Canada, right? So that's a canard. But again, the administration won't talk about the fentanyl issue. They should engage. They need to fight back on these issues. They need to point out that migrants commit crime at far lower percentage than Native Americans do, far lower. So, I mean, but again, you know, my problem with the Democratic Party and the administration is when they have an issue that they don't feel is their home turf, they just don't engage. They just run away from the issue, and they just think that it's better not to talk about it and hope it goes away. And that's really the main issue. I would just wish that the Democrats and the administration would engage more on some of these issues that Republicans feel are their strong suits, because they're really not if they get taken on. You know? Yeah.
I mean, I think that, again, the debate, we have to pull out, we have to, again, find a way to start this thing without all the vitriol. And right now, with some of the people in the House and the Senate, there's, I mean, the Rand Pauls, the Cruzes, the Rubios, you know, it seems to me that we have to somehow convince Republicans that having these voices does not help their cause. And right now, I don't know. I mean, I personally think McCarthy will be able to get the votes, and God knows what he'll give up to get them. But I'd much rather see Scalise or somebody else in there just to change a little bit of the direction that we've seen coming up. But I don't know. Hey, Ron, by the way, everybody should follow you on Twitter. I mean, you're a hound dog, getting these great videos and great posts up there. And you know, between you and ACYN, I don't know how to say his name.
Yeah,
you're my go-to on Twitter. And
that's my brother. He's great. He's one of the best guys out there.
He really is. Good people. And Twitter seems to be back on its feet after kind of a scary little weirdness, right? I mean, although Musk did tweet out that he thinks McCarthy should be in there, so he's not entirely out of the picture. Ron, thank you so much, my friend. You be well, okay?
All right, Chip. See ya.
Again, see you, buddy. Again, former prosecutor and just smart guy. Great stuff. All right. So I had an opportunity to about an hour ago, I interviewed Congressman Ritchie Torres. And so I'm going to try to play a little bit of that for you if I can here. And part of this is that well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. The congressman is from the 15th district in let me see if I can get this right. He is from the 15th district in New York State. And so this was the interview with him just a couple minutes ago. Well, this is obviously an insane period of time in both Washington and across the national landscape as the Republicans battle themselves trying to get somebody as speaker. And we don't know where that's going to go. And of course, it's 2-year anniversary of January 6th. Joining us right now from New York State's 15th congressional district. I'm a fan, Congressman Ritchie Torres. Congressman, thanks so much for being here. Hell of a day.
I'm entering my second term in Congress. In the 117th Congress, I saw an insurrection on my third day on the job. And now in the 118th Congress, I'm seeing an unprecedented assault on the stability of Congress at the hands of the far right. And those two events are closely connected. He magically manages to become speaker, which is highly improbable. He will only be one in name. We are going to be a House
Okay.
of
All right.
Representatives
Shit. All right. I got it. Hang on a second. Wait a second.
but with no actual speaker with an actual ability to govern.
Crap.
You know what bothers me though, Congressman?
I don't
is
know.
that
No audio at all?
these committee seats are being sought in order to bring up subjects that have nothing to do with making America better or safer or infrastructure or the next pandemic. Where it's about embarrassing Fauci.
Well, that's a bummer. Apparently, I've had some issues here with the sound, and I apologize for that, folks. I will get that together and make that available on the site so we can hear more what the congressman said. I was patting myself on the back a little too freaking hard, right? Thinking I got that together. Anyway, to give you just a rundown of what the congressman said is that there's a real problem in the Republican Party. Now, yeah, I mean, there's problems in both parties, and I would make a real strong case that the Republican Party has many more issues. But I first saw the congressman on Bill Maher's show, and he's Hispanic, he's gay, and he's a champion. He's championed this working class district. I believe it's in Queens. And in listening to him talk, and that night on Maher's show, I thought to myself, this is a guy, a young man who has some really great ideas. But here's the truth, I mean, after watching January 6th and watching what happened, I don't know if this problem is easily solved as one might think. Let me play a little bit for you some of the events of January 6th chronologically here. I got them in 3 different clips, and I want you to watch this. And when this is over, and Nikki Maduro will join us in a few minutes, I guess my question to you is, what in the 2 years since then, what's happened to the American psyche? Has this polarization become a generational shift? I know a lot of you listening to me now have family members that are Trumpers still. The people that I had issues with, some friends that supported Trump, have all changed. I just saw one of them this morning, and he's a neighbor, and he goes, "Can you believe Gates nominated Trump?" He goes, "What an ass." And I thought, and I'm the last person to hold something like that over other people's heads about who they voted for forever, especially if people realized that they made a mistake. Let's go back to January 6th, again, 2 years ago, as our nation witnessed, at least in my lifetime, our first insurrection.
Right here, we're going to walk down to the Capitol.
Please welcome the 45th President of the United States of America.
Trump is president, Christ is king. Trump is president, Christ is king.
Let's have trial by combat.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved.
USA!
You can see Vice President Pence and his family quickly move down the stairs. The Vice President turns around briefly as he's headed down.
We were just told that there has been tear gas in the rotunda, and we're being instructed to each of us get gas masks that are under our seats.
You're filming, you're just to hell with this.
This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel. But go home and go home in peace.
The elected representatives of the people of the United States have assembled again on the very same day to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Let's get back to work. The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Joseph R. Biden Jr. of the state of Delaware has received 306 votes. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 232 votes. The chair declares the joint session dissolved.
Pretty mind-numbing, right? You watch that and you ask yourself, how can anybody say that this was a simple tourist visit, or that, as Eric Trump Jr. said, they were just going in to get selfies. I apologize for the technical stuff, folks. This has been one of those days. I'll tell you something in a couple minutes too as we move forward. Mark Thompson show kicks off in about 5 minutes here. Mark,
Hey,
keeping an eye on the vote today.
Yeah,
Obviously, you'll
and
be
that's
doing
just
that.
that's a situation that to me has already spoken of the terrorism that has the governmental terrorism that has infected the GOP. And you, I think, can take reasonable meetings on. And there's Nikki. Hi, Nikki. Nikki always looks so gorgeous.
Yeah, right.
But
you and I
it's
look
really,
like we just got out of the dryer.
No, exactly. It's like
Yeah.
this is the worst $3 to be in. But I was just going to say that I'll take a meeting on changing some of the rules of governmental policy. For example, I hate that Pelosi can kill this. Just to speak, sort of about the more progressive liberal side, because I don't want to always seem like I'm dumping on the GOP, how she can kill that legislation that might have had to do with insider trading or trading of equities and stocks on information that you might have as a legislator. I find that a compelling piece of legislation that should pass. It doesn't even get a vote because Pelosi killed it.
And that's a great point. If you go deep in that, though, however, it's the next layer that, the process of actually determining whether or not a person owns something that they could actually profit from by their, the presence on a committee or, the knowledge that they get. Obviously, insider trading sucks. But you and I both know it's going to keep happening. It's always happened. And there's really no way to really stop it than have a vigilant, SEC, Department of Justice, whatever.
Right. And there'll be an ebb and flow as to that vigilance. But all I'm saying, Chip, is that the way government is set up, I guess I was just making a point. I'll take a meeting on the way it's set up, that the speaker has so much power is a problem in our government, that the Electoral College exists is a problem in our government. These are all things. DC should be a state, et cetera. But the idea and what's going on now on the GOP side, that there is just really a governmental terrorism. That these are just flamethrowers right now on the part of the Gateses of the world, the Taylor Greens of the world. These are real. This is what's ahead for us. I mean, they're just there to block stuff. They're not there to actually legislate anything.
Well, if I could be so shallow, and Nikki knows just how shallow I can be, I say follow the money on all this. If you want to get Republicans to pay attention, follow the money. If it's climate change, show them how we can build our economy around green. If it's
But you have to have deeper pockets to pay him off than some of these lobbyists do.
Well, if it's COVID, for example,
but sadly, of course you're right. I mean, the system's awash in money. But what I would say is there's performative politics that's now going on. These people are handling their brands. Matt Gaetz is a brand.
Exactly.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is a brand. They have social media platforms. They're on cable TV all the time. I'm telling you, Chip, the old school politics that we grew up with in D.C., that is gone. And there's a new kind of me. And that's what these people are doing right now.
Oh, I would disagree. I think it's still there. And in fact, I think in some ways it's actually a lot better than it used to be. And I mean that in that, that back in the J. Edgar Hoover days, the Joe McCarthy days where you.
Well, I mean, okay.
Right, no, but I mean, that wasn't that long ago. It was in our lifetime, right? So my lifetime anyway, Nikki, but when you look at, the solutions here, the real solution in these red states that hate the federal government so much is to get the information to them, especially like Mississippi would be a great example. You want Jackson, Mississippi to have clean water? Your state government can't pull it off. It's the federal government, right? You want your kids to be able to go to a school and get a safe, and, let's just go back to the, reading, writing, and English. Right? Let's just do it real simple. Let's follow some of the past, the things they want. You know, it's right now when you talk
Well,
about
if you're trying to
education-
flip Mississippi, Chip, you're not going to be able to.
no. But I mean,
I got to go do my show. I love you.
Mwah.
I love
Bye,
this conversation.
Mark.
I did more. Bye, guys. See you. Thank you.
But you know, if you really, I mean, if you want to talk about, you know, right now when in the South, when you talk about education, the first thing that comes up is trans bathrooms. I mean, that gets in the way of all the things that they really need to know, right? You know, banning books is ridiculous. If a book in there has something about masturbation or it has something in there about homosexuality, right? And they want to ban it for that, you know, we have to show them that not these kids giving knowledge of these things.
Yeah, but who shows them when you have a certain segment of the population that only gets their information from, let's say, one source that's ginning up all of this outrage that's fake outrage.
Well,
you know, that's the problem.
Not to sound cynical, but money.
You're so good at it, though.
Find a way for people to make money selling the truth. That's the answer. It sounds horribly cynical, but it is the answer.
Fear sells. That just gets to people. You just keep pounding away the same scare tactics and people will buy it. They don't want to believe in the truth. They want to believe that somebody else is taking something from them, putting them in danger, all of that stuff. And I don't know how you fight that off besides paying people.
You fight it off by putting a check at the end of it.
I guess.
No, I'm serious. I mean, look, like I can make this case, and that, as a progressive, I can sit here with an abacus and prove to you that progressive policies help conservatives.
I want to see that. I want to see
Well,
you engage people in Mississippi.
Here is the elevator pitch, right?
Okay.
If the people on the middle and bottom level have nothing to grab hold of, number one, eventually, and Adam Smith, the author of Wealth of Nations, said, if they will bring down the whole system. Okay. So economically, if you have a lower class that has no opportunity to get out, history is replete with examples of what they do, right? Secondly, though, the reason you want middle and lower class to have jobs and money is so they can buy your shit, right? Your major corporations, you want them to buy your shit. And if you don't have if those people do not have an opportunity to buy your shit, eventually the corporations will fall the same way governments do. It's not brain surgery. It's real basic economics. Everything from climate change to LGBT issues, all at their base have a connection to profit and motivation to get out of bed every morning. And I know that's if you take money out of it, and let me put another metaphor in there, it might sound a little less crass, but I think it's true. So
I mean, I think that the disappearing middle class kind of is something that you need to factor into that theory. You know, I mean, the middle class has been disappearing for, you know, it's accelerating how much we're losing the middle class. And yet there doesn't seem to be this uprising. And I will say the reason why is you can always find someone who is having a harder time than you do. And as long as there is someone below you, the rich will convince those that are losing their income, losing their wealth, that there's someone else besides them to blame. I mean, that's also true.
Here's the thing, though. The rich suck at messaging. Okay, they do. They've always sucked at it.
They control all the media, right? I mean,
they don't, though. I mean, you know, like this is the new media. Granted,
that's true.
I mean, and granted, you know, we have, pathetically low numbers for people. I mean, it's funny too. You know, like I have like 350,000 followers on Twitter, but the algorithms only reward me if you
pay.
Yeah, if I bust my ass and I do it again and again and again.
It's all about money, baby.
I mean, I have the opportunity and you have the opportunity. I mean, my videos in the past 4 years have 200 million views.
Ooh, good job.
Well, no, but I mean, my point, I mean, and I have the help of Really American and Brooklyn Dad and others, right, that get those out there. And that's kind of an announcement that I haven't told you this yet. So starting next week, I'm going to be off of my own page and this show is going to be broadcast on Really American's page.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
so how do I find it? How do I find you?
Go to whatthefranklin.com. We'll take you where you have to go for everybody.
So I don't go to YouTube. I go to whatthefranklin.com.
Right.
Okay.
And the reason I'm doing that is because I just, you know, I want to reach. I mean, I want everybody here to come over there and follow us as well. And hopefully, you know, that will bleed into when you guys come on the show. I hope we can get some, because they have like 100,000, I believe, people on subscribers.
Nice.
And between, you know, Brooklyn Dad and T-Pain and Really American and like Ron Filipkowski and Brian Karem and all, you know, we have 3 or 4 million people on Twitter, you know, that we're trying to reach out and bring this into. I mean, we had before I totally effed up that video with Congressman Torres. I don't know what happened. I'll work on that and see if I can get it maybe on Monday. Although, I mean, most of the stuff wasn't really relevant to what's happening with McCarthy today. And
It's good to hear from him, though.
But I mean, I mean, January 6th is really now every day. I mean, it's a possibility is there, and
It
anyway.
doesn't put some people to shame. That's the
So
tragedy of it.
So what do you got hanging? You got this. By the way, I love my coffee. I love my coffee mug. You
Oh,
sent me-
good.
that was so sweet.
Yeah.
All those- was that expensive? Was it totally?
You're worth it. You're
I
worth
understand.
it. Don't even ask. It's
Okay.
just, it's,
But I'd never seen this. It was in styrofoam, and I couldn't open the son of a bitch. It took like 5
That's
minutes.
what Kim McAllister was saying too. That it didn't have an outside box. It was just styrofoam.
I thought it might be a live animal in there. I didn't want to like throw a knife
bomb.
into it. So
No,
anyway,
no.
so-
Well, I'm glad you got it and it arrived safe.
How much
and
you
sound.
charging for those mugs? How much are they?
$1 million.
Hold one up so everybody can see it, so they can order it.
Mine's in the dishwasher.
Oh, you.
It
suck.
looks just like this, but it's a black cup. I mean, it has the logo.
Now,
on
let me
it.
ask you: do you have them in your house and you send them out of your house, or do
God, no,
somebody else sends it to them? Oh, that so you make like 2 pennies on each mug, basically.
But it's so that when you are talking to Brooklyn Dad and Real American, you can hold it in my cup and do some free advertising for me, Chip Franklin. That's,
all right,
that's
well, we
what
got someday in the future we will do a show again together.
Yes, I
Yeah.
want to. I want to. I want to.
really
I want
do
to.
too. All right, your show kicks off at 12.
Yes.
And is there a vote going on right now? I haven't even checked.
They
out.
just finished the 12th vote. I had just had it up. Yeah, so they're trying to deadlock the 12th vote, but he's lost. McCarthy's lost, but apparently there's, according to CNN, some momentum with negotiations.
How many of the people voted for the third guy?
Well, there was Jim Jordan's vote. I don't know. I lost the page. I don't have it up right now.
Did
But
Gates nominate Trump again?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think he might have voted for Jordan. I don't think he voted for Trump. Trump was a dumb vote.
I was telling Ron Filipkowski, I believe, or Mark, before you came on, about my neighbor who voted for Trump. We were out walking dogs. I saw him today, and I like him a lot. I just, that was a real issue, obviously. And he said, "Do you believe Gates? What an idiot!" And I was like,
I know, right?
Yes.
Exactly. It's getting through slowly. So there's
Slowly, the drip, drip, drip.
Exactly.
All right, we'll see you at 12. Thanks, kiddo.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye now. Again, that's the one and only Nikki Maduro. Follow her on YouTube. So from now on, if you want to see the show whenever, and I'm, I really appreciate you being here. And we will get technically more sound moving forward. It's a challenge some days to do things at the last second. I interviewed Representative Torres about 5 seconds before I went on at 9, and I downloaded it to my son, and he sent it over, and I brought it to the other screen, and I don't have enough experience doing that, so I apologize for you. But it's free. You're not paying for it, so shut up. I'm kidding. Anyway, that's it for me. We will do this again on next week. But follow me on whatthefranklin.com for the latest. That's the best way to find out when we're running it again. And next week, I have right now I have Congressman Eric Swalwell scheduled. And I also, I have on the show next week is Billy Baldwin, one of the Baldwin brothers. Great guy and a hardcore political activist. And he'll join us too. So, all right, be well, be safe. Again, follow me at Chip Franklin on Twitter. Till next time.
I can handle things. I'm smart.
We shall overcome. Yes, we can.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
What the fuck is wrong with you?